Hello everyone, a warm welcome back to True to Form. Thanks very much for tuning in. On this week's episode, we've got a look at the DRF with an Ante-post perspective with a view to a non-runner no-bet play at Cheltenham. That's less than 8 or 9 weeks away now. We've got a couple for the tracker for you, a couple of horses that really caught the eye in the last couple of weeks, and because we did the slightly different show with Harry Derham last week, I didn't get a chance to get those in, so we'll catch up with those. We've got Salvator Mundi. What do you do with a problem like Salvator Mundi? Now Ante-post favourite for the Supreme Novices Hurdle on the back of that performance over the weekend. It left a lot to be desired. Let's be honest, do we trust our eyes or do we use the information that we're getting fed from the Close Sutton think tank and bear in mind that he could well be a much better horse than the one that we saw? Do we trust the Tipperary run or do we trust the weekend run? A little bit more data to suggest that we might be better using our eyes rather than our ears. And then finally we'll wind up with weekend pointers, some tips I think for the Winter Millions over the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We've got 2 days at Windsor with some good racing and they sandwich a brilliant day at Ascot on Saturday. So plenty to get through this week. Let's start off with that Ante-post view. So the DRF promises to be an actually electrifying weekend of action in early February, the 1st and the 2nd, Saturday and the Sunday. Brilliant meeting if you haven't been, well worth attending, some great horses on show. We've got 8 races so far horses entered up, and you know a lot of those races are priced up as well. I've scoured through those markets. I can't really see an angle at the moment. You're playing Willie Mullins bingo in a lot of the races. Obviously Gordon Elliott's got a lot of doubly entered horses. It's going to make life difficult for Ante-post punting, really. And when Lossymouth is probably your idea of the best bet on the back of that performance behind Constitution Hill, and she's 11 to 8 for the Champion Hurdle, obviously, on the Sunday, then that probably tells you need to draw stumps and there aren't any real great bets to be had. Instead, let's have a look forward to the Cheltenham Festival. I know everything doesn't revolve around Cheltenham and the DRF is a great meeting in its own right, but until we have those final fields, have a look at a horse called the Enabler, who I think is 10 to 1 with William Hill, non-runner no bet for the Martin Pipe. Now, it's a race that Gordon Elliott's done exceptionally well in recent years. And this son of Walk in the Park, well, this 2.5 miles of the Martin Pipe, the interim trip, looks absolutely perfect for him. He didn't get 3 miles when he was pulled up. He's back to form last time out, over 2.5. Thought it was a really good effort at Leopardstown over Christmas. He chased home Jasmine DeVoe, who admittedly didn't jump particularly well and disappointed next time out, over 2 miles. But that was in a big field at Navan. I like the fact that he's coped with a big field because obviously the Martin Pipe is usually a full field. He's off a mark of 130 at the moment. Now that will get him in. He's got 2 entries at the DRF, both in grade 1s, the 2.6 and the 2 mile. And that's the 5th run that he'll need to qualify for a non-novice handicap at the Cheltenham Festival. So the stars are starting to align for the Enabler. Really like him as a physical prospect, a big, tall, imposing horse who gallops strongly. 2.5 looks his trip at the moment. I think conditions will be absolutely ideal for him come Cheltenham on that Friday. The setup of this race looks ideal. He's a pretty robust horse and hopefully he'll go very well. And 10 to 1 non-runner no bet, I don't think we've got a lot of downside with striking a bet like that. He's clearly a classy horse who's running some pretty decent races and I like the way that he knuckled down last time. So let's make him a bet. Okay, let's proceed with the trackers then. A couple of horses for your trackers, lightly raced horses over hurdles. They've been around the tracks a little bit on the flat, so you might well know these names. I'm sure you'll probably know the first of those, and that's Educator, who was bred by the Queen, raced for William Haggis, won a couple of races on the level for William, then went to Mick Appleby for a short spell, and now ended up with Henrietta Knight. And of course, Henrietta is starting to have winners in the jumping sphere. Had a flat winner as well, so they are starting to click on a little bit, that yard. And in Educator, they look to have a really nice prospect, I think, for 2.5 mile handicap hurdles. Hopefully his mark will be quite lenient once he gets it. But 2.5 mile handicap hurdles in the spring should be just perfect for this lad. Been really taken with how he's jumped and travelled through a couple of races over the minimum trip, first at Southwell, and then last time out behind Vanderpoel, the nicely regarded horse of Ben Paulings, who really quickened up well to win at Huntingdon. Educator got left behind a little bit on the home turn, but stayed on quite steadily. It's a really nice performance, another step in the right direction. and his race IQ jump index was around 7.4, 7.6 for both starts. So that's a very sound jumping performance from a flat horse. And I think once he gets assessed and handicapped, I think we can have a bit of fun with him over 2.5 mile handicaps over distance of ground on decent ground in the spring. The second horse for your tracker is High Fibre, who's now trained by Harry Fry, used to be with Rafe Beckett, ran on January the 8th at Taunton, finished second to the hardest geezer, but his race IQ data was really encouraging. He gained 11.4 lengths on his rivals, and his race IQ jump index was 8.9, which for a lightly raced hurdling prospect was very, very encouraging. The speed figure was a lot quicker than his original start, and that was at Wincanton, his debut over hurdles behind Vaguely Royal, where again he jumped very soundly, gained lengths on his rivals. I just think this lad is a winner waiting to happen, albeit in probably an average sort of southwest, southeast novice hurdle perhaps, or once he gets handicapped. I thought it was a really encouraging performance against a horse that got a lot more experience than him. So High Fibre is the second one to go into the tracker alongside Educator. So on Sunday at Punchestown, we saw Salvator Mundi advance his claims for the Supreme Novices Hurdle with victory in the Moscow Flyer, a race that Willie Mullins has used as a stepping stone for a number of quality horses, not least Mystical Power 12 months ago, and also the likes of Min, Vitor, Duvan. They've all used that as a really nice stepping stone into the Cheltenham Festival. It's a race that he clearly targets and enjoys using. Now, where do we stand with Salvator Mundi? You know, some people are willing to overlook the fact he was keen, too fresh, charged into the first, didn't jump particularly accurately or effectively all the way round. His race IQ jump index was just 6.7. He lost a length and a half on his rivals and lengths gain metric. So loads to work on for Salvator Mundi, but the raw ability is there. He has got a serious engine, as we saw from the home turn at Punchestown, where he swept by his field and went on to win Cosley by 2 or 3 lengths. It was a race really, and a performance that left more questions than answers for me. Obviously, he was going to be shortened up in the market. A number of bookmakers went 6 into 3, 7 to 2 best in the village. And when you look down the list and you see 1 or 2 of the rivals that are all in and around the 20, 25 to 1 mark that probably aren't going to make the race, have yet to jump a hurdle in public. And indeed, a number of the other horses just behind him in the list are also trained by Willie Mullins and could go elsewhere or find different targets, whatever. It makes you think that the race might cut up quite dramatically. Of course, his all-round performance needs to sharpen up massively for a Grade 1. We saw at Tipperary that the raw ability's there, and that might be the best way to settle him. Jump off in front, hood on, tongue-tie equipped, and just let him pop at his hurdles and go from the front and try and run horses into the ground. With a horse like Romeo Coolio, though, who's second favourite in the market, he's very professional, jumps pretty well in the main, has got pace to burn. That could play to his strengths. I still like him as an Ante-post vehicle for this race. He's around 8 to 1 still in the village. I think he's 6 to 1 non-runner no bet with William Hill, which is probably a bit on the tight side, but probably fair. I don't know if he'll run at the DRF. My suspicion is that he probably won't, and he'll be safe for Cheltenham. He's got the requisite hurdle runs now. He's been to the Cheltenham Festival, of course, with a fine second in the bumper last year, so he knows what that's all about. And I think he's got everything in his locker really to perform with great quality on the first day of the Cheltenham Festival. So I'm happy with Romeo Coolio. I'm still undecided about Salvator Mundi. Obviously the engine is there, but he just needs to polish up and smarten up. He just looked like a big, gangly, inexperienced hurdle at the moment. And whether he's up to Grade 1 standard or not, well, the engine certainly is, but are all the other components, are they ideally well factored in for the Grade 1 test that he's going to meet in Cheltenham in a couple of months' time? So let's have a good look at the racing on Saturday. Well, indeed, start on Friday as well, because it's the first day of the Winter Millions meeting. 2 days at Windsor, Friday and Sunday, and they sandwich a brilliant card at Ascot on Saturday, which features a Clarence House Chase and a host of very competitive action. Just start off at Windsor on the Friday, and I'll declare an interest in Brentford Hope, who runs in the 3:35 at Windsor. It's quite a competitive handicap hurdle list with a number of horses that are duly entered over the weekend. But Brentford Hope has had this as his target for some little time. I'm fortunate enough to earn a very small share in him. He's been a great money spinner for the yard and done exceptionally well for Harry Derham. in his time since joining from Richard Hughes's yard for 90,000. That looks money well spent, really. I see he's as big as 16-1 for this handicap. Now, he wouldn't want the ground to dry out too much, but he comes here off the back of a very fair effort at Wincanton behind Roubaud, who's a very solid horse around there. He could be that he's a bit of a twilight horse, Brentford Hope, not good enough to go into those graded hurdles and compete, and perhaps just a bit too poorly handicapped for these top handicaps that he's going to be contesting from here on in. But fingers crossed he'll give a good account of himself, and he's definitely worth a small each way bet at 16-1, hopefully if there's 4 places floating about. My primary fancy in that race would probably be Navajo Indy, who beat one of Harry Derham's horses, Queen's Gamble, in the Jerry Fielden Hurdle at Newbury. And that's a race that's working out particularly well, as we touched on in last week's sort of podcast. 4 winners have come out of that race already. It was running at a good clip, and I think Navajo Indy is a very interesting contender here. Still believe he's well handicapped, and Tom Simmons had a winner earlier on in the week, so he's definitely one of interest. Swiftly moving on to Saturday's action then, and of course Ascot Saturday takes centre stage, but there's also very competitive racing at Haydock, and I fancy a couple at Wincanton, so let's get through those quickly. Vianney, a horse that was touched on by Harry Derham in last week's edition, runs in the first race at Ascot, and that's a terrific race in prospect because it has Lulamba, who's been the Ante-post gambler for the Triumph Hurdle, and also Sauvignon from Paul Nicholls' yard, so it looks a strong heat of its type. But I think if there's some tasty prices about for Vianney, he's battle hardened. He's already been over hurdles, English hurdles as well at Market Raisin. Coached with a right-handed track. He jumped pretty well, travelled well. He's got a bit of boot, and he could just be a bit of value against a couple of talking horses there. So I wouldn't put you off having a small interest in Vianney in that opening race, the 12:30 at Ascot. Let's get up to Haydock then quickly, where it could be a right royal afternoon, couldn't it? Royal Infantry and the Rossington Main. I think he's as big as 6-4 at time of recording. I think that's very fair value for a horse that's already whizzed round Haydock's tight turns. And Royal Pagaille and the Peter Marsh, a 3-1 chance at time of recording. Obviously, we all know his record at Haydock when the ground gets very heavy. He's never been one to really back up big performances. That's the only slight alarming possibility with him. But he has been off for 56 days. Hopefully he'll be fresh and well after an 8-week absence from his last win there, which of course was in the Betfair Chase, where he beat Grey Dawning. Back into handicap company, conceding lumps of weight, that shouldn't be a huge issue for a horse of his ability. And as I say, it could be a right royal afternoon there, with Royal Infantry winning the 155 and Royal Pagaille in the 230. Another horse of interest at Haydock would be Punta del Este, who runs in the 3-miler. That's at 3:05. 10-1 4 places on offer at the moment. I thought he shaped with conspicuous promise behind a decent horse last time out. Steel Alley was only beaten 6 lengths on that occasion. I think the step up to 3 miles will really suit him here, and he's very much fancied to go well if he does line up. That's in the Haydock 3:05. Quickly then down to Taunton. One good bet on the card for me here, and it's Jenna Dudery, who shaped very well in the race behind Bluey, for those of us could just about see it coming out of the mist and the fog that day down at Wincanton. Finished second on that occasion. She missed the second last out, Paul Nicholls' mare, and then really finished off strongly to chase home Bluey. I think that's a really good, strong piece of form. I like that race, and I've already highlighted it could be one to follow. She's already won a Taunton bumper, so she goes around the track absolutely fine. She's had a wind up since then, and I thought she shaped real well, really, over debut over hurdles. I thought it was a really encouraging performance. Hopefully she can get off the mark over obstacles at the second time of asking in that 1:30 at Taunton. Okay, that's a brief appraisal of the weekend's action then. Plenty to look forward to, plenty of data for us to digest in next week's edition, and we'll also have an in-depth preview, of course, of Trials Day at Cheltenham, which is coming up as well. So thanks very much for joining me this week. I look forward to speaking to you next week.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.